It's wedding season for me and my partner Grace, and one of the couples tying the knot this year are our friends Annie and Noah. They have a lovely tradition of making a scrapbook each year to document their adventures, so I thought, what better gift than a custom scrapbook to start their married life together? I wanted this to be a gift from the both of us, so it seemed only fitting to task Grace, who is the artistic one between us, with tracing one of their engagement photos to create a line drawing which I could then turn into the cover design using my Cricut and a hot foil pen attachment. And you're about to see the most satisfying part of the process, where the foil is lifted. Annie was Grace's flatmate in Cambridge just a few months prior to the pandemic, and it's during the first lockdown where Grace and I first met online. It was a difficult time for everyone, but meeting Grace was a huge silver lining during what was otherwise a dark and uncertain period. As a couple, we owe a lot to Annie and Noah. We somehow managed to coordinate regular visits without breaching the rules, and their support made those early stages of our relationship possible. Here I'm wetting the cloth paper to relax the fibres and lower the risk of wrinkling when I glue it to the fabric backer. I'm using a 30-70 mix of methyl cellulose and PVA to glue some lightweight cotton calico to the paper to give it some more structure, which is needed for the hinge on the front cover. I saturate the fabric, then lay the paper on top, making sure to press it down from the center outwards to avoid trapping any wrinkles. This then gets stacked between silicone parchment sheets to stop it sticking and grey boards to absorb moisture while I press it overnight to dry. The next day, I glued the cover to the book boards, loosely following a video for a post-bound photo album from bookbinding. Annie and Noah were actually there at what would become the start of my bookbinding journey, when I made a book recording all of the messages Grace and I sent each other between matching online and finally meeting in person as soon as the coronavirus lockdowns would allow. Things weren't very easy at the time. The pandemic rules were convoluted and constantly changing. It would have been difficult enough to navigate even if Grace lived alone. So the patience and support Noah and Annie showed me, an outsider now regularly visiting their flatmate, was vital. I have a great amount of gratitude towards them for enabling all the happiness and accomplishments me and Grace have made in our 5 years together. Eventually, the pandemic would ease and we could get out and do more around Cambridge, and it's these memories that I put into the end paper art of my first book, where Annie and Noah have a cameo. Annie can be seen in a boat while Noah cheers her on, something that happened often. Annie was a keen rower, and we have fond memories of sitting on the riverbank near the flat, watching her race against rival colleges in some of the many races that are a constant on the River Cam. Noah would always be shouting the loudest messages of encouragement as the boats flew past. Once both the front and rear boards were glued in and the edges trimmed and then turned in, I placed them in the press again to dry overnight. The next step of the process was lining the inside of the cover boards. I'm using some really lovely marbled paper from the Whimsical Marbler. She's a really good seller I found on Etsy, who was really responsive and helpful when I needed some guidance on the grain direction of the paper. If you are using paper that's been sent in a tube, I'd highly recommend laying it out with some paperweights to keep it flat the night before you use it. I forgot to do this, and you'll see me fighting the curling paper the whole time I'm trying to measure and trim it to size. Once you wet the edges of the paper with some glue, the curling will mostly go away, and it's a lot more compliant as you go to paste it down. At this point, I was cutting and folding the page blanks while Grace was away at Annie's hen party. It's one of those repetitive tasks that lets your mind wander, and that's when I started writing this script. Just to pull back the curtain a bit, this is actually the first project I've filmed for the channel. I'm still finding my voice and figuring out the tone of these videos, and I can't quite post this video straight away because I don't want to ruin the surprise of the gift. Right about now, I was starting to have some major concerns about the bulk of the pages and how inflexible the stack was feeling. I was hoping that a night in the press would fix everything, as it often does in bookbinding, but I think this was wishful thinking, even with my trusty copy press. I decided to ignore my doubts and press on with marking out the hole locations using a blank page as a guide, and then drilling them with a Japanese hole punch. Unfortunately, the press and all of my wishful thinking weren't enough to tame the unrelenting pressure of folded paper. The crease that I'd made for the page guards was adding thickness to the spine, forcing the outer edge of the spine board up, which looked bad, and the pages were as inflexible as I'd feared. This would require a complete rethink. I moved on to the spine covering while I mulled over a solution in my mind. Here I'm tricking the Cricut into moving the cutter to the furthest edge of the mat to reveal my workpiece so that I can pause it and add the heat reactive foil to the paper between the scoring and cutting operations. I then repeated this to remove the foil before allowing it to cut. I'm using Renaissance wax as an archival sealant to help protect the foil and prevent it getting rubbed away while it's handled. Whilst waiting for the glue to dry, I saw this Instagram reel from La Miga Roja showing off their accordion-bound photo album, and the solution suddenly became so obvious to me. It was clear that I would need to use this concertina mechanism for the spine, but I was concerned about the sturdiness of the paper that I would need to use for it. Too thin and it would easily tear, but if it was too thick it would add bulk, reducing the number of pages I could put into the album. And then I remembered Tyvek, the material used on those annoying and uncomfortable concert wristbands that always seem to stick to your arm hair no matter how much you focus on putting them on. This is a material with a very similar structure to paper, but using synthetic fibers. It will score and cut as easy as any standard paper, but it's extremely difficult to rip, even at weights as low as 55 GSM, which is what I'm using here. I had to come up with a pattern for this on the fly. I didn't want to start all over again, as the wedding seemed to be thundering towards us at this point, and I actually quite liked the style of this binding, so I devised a way to add up additional pleats to the front and back of the text block that would allow the pages to rise up and over the rigid portion of the spine, allowing them to lay flat. After threading the spine through all of the pages, I measured out the width of the retainer cards I'd need to secure the pages and tested it out. When I was happy, I cut out a batch of them using the Cricut, making sure to label them so that they don't get tidied away and lost with all of the offcuts of paper that get generated while scrapbooking. I designed a spacer for the spine that could be 3D printed to give the spine the correct thickness for the text block and to give the ultra-flexible accordion spine some structure. I included a recess in the spacer to accommodate those extra folds in the concertina, which allow the pages to rise up and over the spine. I'm glad to be tightening the screws on this project for the last time. There's nothing more satisfying than engineering a solution to a problem that's been nagging you for a while, and this project has been sat on my desk for longer than I care to admit. I hope that filling this book with memories of their wedding will give Noah and Annie a similar sense of satisfaction. Thanks to both of you for the part you've played in mine and Grace's life together. And to everyone else who's watching, see you next time.